Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Investment Symposium. To start with, let me thank the leadership of UAE for providing support and providing the guidance for the development of space, both in the region and globally. And look, we're going to talk about the space investment, and it's great to see so many people in the room, even though it's second day, it's afternoon, everyone just had lunch. Nevertheless, so many of you in the room, I think it just highlights the importance of the topic for the commercial development of space and for the growth of the industry. And what I'm going to talk about in the short introduction is, rather than looking at the space industry and what the investment community is going to do, look at the opportunity that the space industry presents to the investor. So as the infamous words of Adam Smith go, it's not the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. And when investors evaluate their interest, when they're looking at the opportunity, there are a number of questions that they're going to ask, and one of the crucial questions is going to be about timing. And so the big question is, why invest in space now? To answer this question, different people are going to draw inspiration from different topics. Some people are going to look at the technology or analysis of finance. Some people are going to look at other people. But being raised by a historian, I tend to draw inspiration from history. And it's actually very interesting if we take a look at the last 300 years of our history, economic history, and since industrial revolution, so financial revolution and industrial revolution. They emerge in a very interesting pattern, a very telling story. For example, if we take a look at the communication industry, we started with mail coaches, went to the telegraph, and telephone, and finally we got into the mobile age, and now we're on the verge of using 5G network. And then, of course, the 5G network, in many places, is going to be dependent on space for its backbone communication. Let's look at transportation, all the way from the railways and steamboats to the current autonomous driving. And again, autonomous driving is going to be space dependent. Agriculture, one of my favorites. So, 1700s actually, the age of agricultural revolution. And it happened because the Chinese plow has been to using fertilizers, the genetically modified crops, then we're kind of taking a step back to organic food. And the next step for us that we absolutely have to take in order to feed the soon 10 billion population of our planet is the precision farming, which again heavily depends on space. And of course, the industrial development over the last 300 years, as in the history before that, was heavily dependent on science. And so, if we take a look at our history timeline from the Lavoisier law all the way to the discovery of electromagnetism and radiation, we look at what are discoveries that are most weighted in the next 20 years. And this is dark matter and dark energy. 95%, more than 95% of our universe consists of dark matter and dark energy. Understanding the nature of it not only can provide backing for new applications, new technologies, it's going to change our understanding of physics and universe. And there are a number of scientific space missions that are being launched right now for the study of the dark matter and dark energy. And so if we take a look at across the major industry, from finance, agriculture, transportation, with time we see that we're becoming more and more space dependent. Actually, right now I'm going to highlight those industries that depend on space, and we can see that even with the space era emerging, there was just, well, effectively just the broadcasting was dependent on space. Then, as the mobile applications became widespread, and we started using GNSS services and social media, the reliance on space increased. And now, once we're moving to the area of connectivity, effectively the future growth of the world economy is largely driven by space and space applications. There is a huge demand for space applications. And at the same time, if we take a look at the, just right now, the applications that I highlighted, that are kind of in pink, yeah? Those are the applications that enable space. So there is a lot of interconnectivity between terrestrial, extraterrestrial economy and back. And why waste time? We're becoming more dependent on space. There is a number of things. So first of all, the growing demand. And this is both driven by GNSS applications, the growing population, and the development of the technology on the terrestrial side. And also, it's driven from the supply side. So deminiaturization of electronics, emergence of the CubeSat, and the fact that now space is much more accessible, that provides the factors on the supply side that enabled the movement from geostationary orbit to MEO and LEO. And once we get to LEO, we get completely different economics, we get completely different technology, where latency falls, so we can use two-way communication, we can use the fleets like OneWeb and others that are being developed right now. So we're going to the completely new technical applications and new business models. And that is what will enable the growth of the industry from current 350 billion to 1.4 trillion that is projected for the next 2 decades. And that is the huge opportunity that an investor is facing. Now, when we're thinking about, well, how big is that opportunity, it's really good to use some reference. And so for our understanding, if we think about 348 billion, it's, well, approximately the size of Singapore, the economy the size of Singapore. So it's developed, large economies that are in the top 40 by the GDP count. But once we move to 1.4 trillion, it's effectively making a huge jump to the top 15 economies. So it's becoming the size of the economy of Canada or Italy. This is the economic opportunity that faces the investor. And that's why there has been considerable surge in the investment in space industry over the last few years especially. We reached the 18 billion cumulative investment in space. Over 400 companies have been invested. There are over 400 VC firms and private equity firms that are invested in space. So let's think, is that a lot? Is that a big number? So again, we need to find some sort of reference. And the reference we can use is, again, if we compare it with other economies. So if we take space industry as a separate economy and look at its size and look at the investment that has been made in the space, and this is year 2017, and I have to make a disclaimer here, there are different numbers for the number of investments. So there is a difference between the deals that has been announced and deals that has been completed. So the 2.6 is the count of deals that have been completed. So if we look at the investments that were made in space versus the industry, it's about 0.7%. So is that a lot or a little? Well, if we look at North America, that number starts at about 1.2%. If we look at China, it's 0.4%, but we have to understand that traditionally China was relying on a very different way of financing the industry growth. And just right now, China is emerging as the VC and private equity powerhouse. So we expect that number to change significantly in the coming years. Let's take a look at another top 3 economy in the world, that's India, and it's 1.2%. And then the most dynamically developing private equity markets in the Southeast Asia region, so Singapore and Indonesia, have a ratio of about 1.6%. So if we average out, that comes to about 1.1%. So it seems that the space industry right now is significantly underinvested as far as private equity is concerned. And getting additional investment in the space industry, so that we go from 0.7 to 1.1%, it's effectively somewhere between 800 and 1.2 billion a year. So there is $1 billion opportunity a year in terms of additional investment that can be supported by the economic development of that industry at the current stage. And this is why we're excited. And this is why our company focuses purely on the investment in space and space-related industries. And I hope you share our excitement. And with that, without further ado, I welcome our distinguished panelists that are going to discuss what are the opportunities and challenges on the way of investors realizing their self-interests.